It began with a moment, one drenched in calculated glamour, ambition, and a flicker of desperation hiding behind a practiced smile. Underneath the brilliant lights of Los Angeles, where stars are born and discarded within the span of a viral moment, Meghan Markle stepped onto the red carpet at the premiere of the new film Weapons. The crowd stirred, not in applause, but in confusion. Whispers darted across velvet ropes. Paparazzi adjusted their lenses with uncertainty, unsure whether to flash or frown. Something was off. She was dressed for victory, for a moment of redemption, but what unfolded would become a spectacle she could never have predicted or controlled. It was meant to be her reemergence, a triumph after months of headlines suggesting her empire was crumbling. The lucrative Netflix deal had just been severed. Rumors swirled about tension at home, diminishing influence in Hollywood, and high-profile friends going quiet. Meghan, once hailed as the modern Cinderella who defied royal tradition, was now at a crossroads. She wasn't just showing up at the premiere for fun. This was, by every indication, a strategic attempt to reclaim a place among the elite. But Hollywood has its own royalty, and on this night, the Duchess learned that titles don't guarantee entry. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. The premiere of Weapons wasn't just any film event. It was a cinematic battleground drawing the biggest names in the industry. Critics were eager, stars were polished, and the atmosphere buzzed with the electricity of anticipation. The film was expected to redefine careers, mark a new wave of storytelling, and reposition its cast members into the pantheon of must-haves. Julia Garner, the lead, was being hailed as a modern muse, a talent wrapped in quiet defiance and layered performance. Her presence alone had shifted the spotlight from veteran stars to a new generation of storytellers. This was her night, her film, and her throne. Into this moment walked Meghan, uninvited, unannounced, and entirely self-assured. Those who saw her arrive said she exited the black SUV slowly, like she expected something to happen the moment her heels touched the red carpet. And something did, a hush. Not awe, not admiration, but a stunned silence. Eyes darted toward PR handlers. Were they expecting her? Did she have a place? Was this a surprise cameo or a social ambush? The photographers, caught between instinct and confusion, took a few shots, then hesitated. Security flinched, whispering into radios. She posed, nonetheless, her smile unwavering. But something behind her eyes flickered, a trace of uncertainty or perhaps recognition that the room was colder than expected. This was not the Meghan of the Oprah interview. Not the trailblazing Duchess casting off the constraints of monarchy. This was a woman walking a tightrope, looking for footing in a city that has little patience for hesitation. Her name still carried weight, but not in the way it once had. For all the clout, controversy, and conversation that surrounded her, Hollywood had started to move on. And now, she was about to discover how quickly the machine could chew up and spit out anyone. Even a duchess with a Netflix docuseries and a podcast once hailed as the next big thing. The whispers grew louder as she moved down the line. Stylists exchanged glances. A-list guests paused their interviews, murmuring about her appearance. PR reps scrambled behind the scenes, trying to determine if her name was on any list. She looked radiant, but the crowd looked restless. Not hostile, not aggressive, just unsure. Her presence didn't make sense. And when things don't make sense in Hollywood, they're usually managed swiftly and behind closed doors, or in this case, velvet ropes. She tried to position herself for interviews, but the press line shifted like water around a stone. Julia Garner's team quickly moved forward, and soon the media began focusing entirely on the film's main cast. Meghan was left momentarily stranded, standing alone in a pool of photographers who had suddenly found other priorities. She smiled wider, clutched her bag tighter, adjusted her posture, all in subtle attempts to recalibrate. But even the most practiced grace couldn't mask the cracks. She wasn't being welcomed. She wasn't even being acknowledged. And for someone who once commanded the world's attention, that silence was louder than any scandal. Then came the approach. A woman with a headset, clipboard in hand, moved in quickly and quietly. Her conversation with Meghan was brief but tense. Onlookers couldn't hear every word, but Meghan's expression shifted. Surprise, indignation, then restraint. She nodded, stepped aside, and was quietly led away from the main entrance. Security flanked her discreetly. She was not escorted out forcibly. This wasn't a scene of shouting or tears, but it was an extraction nonetheless, a removal masked as a redirect. By the time Julia Garner emerged from her car, Meghan was already gone. What happened in those minutes remains a blend of speculation and whispered confirmations. Some claim she had crashed the event, leveraging old connections in an attempt to gain last-minute entry. Others insisted her invitation had been quietly revoked after higher-ups feared her presence would overshadow the film's stars or spark controversy. There are even murmurs that multiple A-listers had threatened not to attend if Meghan remained. True or not, the effect was real. She had been removed from the spotlight by forces far more powerful than royal titles or public sympathy. This wasn't just a social misstep. It was a symbolic fall from a pedestal that had once seemed unshakable. And yet, it was also a moment layered with emotion. Because behind the glitz and gossip, there was something deeply human about Meghan's exit that night. She had taken a risk. She had stepped into a world that had quietly decided it no longer needed her. And whether out of arrogance, hope, or sheer desperation, she had tried anyway. The result was not just rejection, it was erasure. Later that evening, as clips of her arrival and sudden absence began circulating on social media, the internet erupted. Some mocked her, some defended her. Others simply watched in morbid fascination as the Duchess of Sussex, once one of the most polarizing women in the world, became the face of an awkward, unspeakable humiliation. And yet, for all the commentary, very few could answer one lingering question. Why did she really go? Was it a calculated stunt to reclaim attention? A misunderstanding blown out of proportion? Or was it a final plea to remain visible in a world that had already made up its mind? That question hung heavy, unanswered, suspended between sympathy and schadenfreude. This is the story of that night. The night a woman once heralded as a revolutionary walked into Hollywood expecting applause and left swallowed by silence. It's a tale of power, perception, and the brutal politics of relevance. But more than anything, it's a portrait of what happens when fame begins to fade and no one opens the door back in. She had been away from the center of the storm just long enough for the public to start asking where she'd gone. Not missing, exactly. Meghan Markle was never one to vanish completely. But after the spectacular unraveling of her media deals, the social snubs, and the increasing whispers of irrelevance, it became apparent even to her most loyal supporters that something had shifted. Meghan had once been everywhere: newsstands, screens, podcasts, interviews, paparazzi shots, think pieces. But now, the buzz had quieted. The headlines had moved on. New names were trending, new stars were rising. And that's when she decided it was time to stage a return. Not a quiet reappearance, but a dramatic one, timed for maximum impact. She had every reason to believe it could work. After all, this was Meghan Markle, the woman who broke the royal mold, who captivated a nation, rattled a palace, and told her truth to Oprah with the world watching. She had survived media firestorms, family betrayals, and the scrutiny of both the British press and American audiences. Reinvention wasn't just something she did, it was part of her DNA. From struggling actress to royal spouse to independent mogul, every chapter of her life had been marked by transformation. But this chapter was different. This time, the stakes were higher. The silence from the public wasn't just a pause, it felt like a verdict. And she needed to change it. The premiere of the film Weapons was handpicked, not just because of the star-studded guest list or the prestige of the film, but because it represented the kind of cultural relevance Meghan craved. The film was poised to make waves, and its ensemble cast was made up of actors currently dominating award circuits and magazine covers. This wasn't some B-list affair where she could hope to outshine the crowd with her presence alone. This was the moment for her to prove she still belonged in the conversation, not as a relic of royal drama or a tabloid fixture, but as a serious figure in Hollywood. She began preparing weeks in advance. Her team, while reportedly smaller than in previous years, was instructed to pull every possible string. Stylists were contacted, designers were courted, PR consultants were briefed. The plan was clear. She would arrive unannounced but undeniably glamorous. A surprise appearance designed to reclaim headlines and reignite public fascination. She would walk the red carpet, pose effortlessly, and remind the world, in a single moment, that Meghan Markle was still a force to be reckoned with. But behind the scenes, not everything was going smoothly. Some of the people she had counted on in the past were suddenly unavailable. Messages went unanswered. Designers who once offered custom gowns began offering off-the-rack alternatives. And publicists, when asked to coordinate press interactions at the event, responded with vague apologies or claimed scheduling conflicts. There was a tension in the air that her team tried to ignore, but it lingered. Hollywood, it seemed, was hesitant. Still, Meghan pressed forward. The idea of giving up, of staying home and watching the premiere unfold without her, was unthinkable. She believed, deeply, that she still had something to offer, that the culture still had a place for her, and perhaps most importantly, that she could shift the narrative with one well-timed appearance. It wouldn't be the first time she'd done it. The Oprah interview had rewritten the rules. The Netflix documentary had made waves. Even her podcast, though short-lived, had sparked global conversations. Why couldn't she do it again? Her appearance was carefully crafted. The dress was sleek but bold, with subtle nods to royal elegance and modern fashion. Her hair was styled in soft waves, makeup understated but camera-ready. Jewelry was chosen to remind the public of her Duchess title, elegant but assertive. And the expression? Poised, confident, maybe even defiant. This wasn't a woman begging for attention. This was a woman demanding recognition. As the date approached, there were last-minute meetings. Discussions about seating arrangements, possible media appearances, and how to navigate potential awkward interactions with certain celebrities. Not everyone was thrilled about her potential presence. But in Meghan's mind, that only underscored how important her attendance would be. If she could walk into that room, into that premiere, and command the spotlight, it would be a statement, not just to Hollywood, but to the world. Still, she knew the risks. This was not the safe territory of Oprah's living room or a staged Netflix interview. This was the public square of entertainment, messy, fast-moving, and brutally honest. There would be no editor to shape the footage, no protective palace staff to manage the optics. If it went wrong, it would go wrong publicly. And if it went right, she could change everything. But there was something else, a shadow that had been growing quietly behind her for months. The unraveling of her media empire. The Netflix deal, once reported as being worth up to $100 million, had collapsed with a quiet thud. Spotify had ended their partnership with a pointed statement. Even insiders close to former projects began leaking details about behind-the-scenes dysfunction. Meghan, some said, had begun to believe her own myth. That she didn't understand the mechanics of Hollywood the way she thought she did. That she mistook attention for admiration. These weren't just criticisms. They were warnings. That the industry she once thought she'd conquered was now slowly rejecting her. And that rejection, subtle, polite, but undeniable, was beginning to show. But even as the storm clouds gathered, Meghan remained focused. Her plan was simple. Show up, smile, pose, let the cameras do the rest. She didn't need to speak. She didn't need to explain. Her presence would be the statement. And once the internet saw her standing confidently among Hollywood's brightest, the narrative would shift. That was the goal. That was the calculation. She arrived at the venue just minutes before the main cast was scheduled to walk the red carpet. Timing was everything. Too early, and she'd seem desperate. Too late, and she'd be overshadowed. Her car pulled up slowly, the tinted window revealing only a silhouette. Paparazzi perked up. For a moment, they weren't sure who it was. Then the door opened, and she stepped out. Flashbulbs. Murmurs. A ripple of energy passed through the crowd. She was back. Or so she thought. From the outside, Hollywood is a kingdom built on lights, lenses, and lavish facades. But beneath its polished red carpets and well-tailored diplomacy lies a system as exclusive and unforgiving as any royal court. And if there's one unspoken truth that governs this world, it's this. You're only as powerful as the people willing to let you stay. Meghan Markle, once the darling of the Hollywood meets monarchy fantasy, was beginning to discover just how easily the doors could close and how silently it could happen. There had been no official blacklist. No memo circulated among studios or events. That wasn't how Hollywood operated. Instead, it came in quiet refusals, in text messages that were never returned, in invitations that never arrived. It was in the sudden unavailability of stylists who used to beg for the chance to dress her. In the muted enthusiasm of agents and producers who once saw her as the perfect crossover icon. This wasn't overt rejection, it was slow erosion. Not a storm, but a drought. What triggered this quiet revolt? Some pointed to the infamous Spotify breakup, a public parting that sent shockwaves through the industry. The streaming giant's abrupt exit from their multi-million-dollar deal with Meghan and Harry didn't just end a podcast series. It sent a message. According to several insiders, the word behind closed doors was that Archwell Audio had been difficult to work with, overly controlling and under-delivering. Then came the remark from Spotify's own Bill Simmons, calling the couple grifters. It wasn't a throwaway insult. It was a crack in the facade. Industry executives, the kinds of people who sign checks, greenlight shows, and whisper truths behind martini glasses at Soho House, took notice. Meghan wasn't just controversial. She was becoming unpredictable, unbankable, not because she lacked appeal, but because she demanded an environment that Hollywood doesn't cater to. She didn't want to play the game. And worse, she thought she could rewrite it. Behind the scenes, producers who had once courted her now spoke more cautiously. They remembered the early days when Meghan and Harry landed in California as symbols of rebellion and reinvention. At the time, it was all possibility. Streaming deals, documentary pitches, philanthropy-focused branding partnerships. The future sparkled. But that shine had faded, and now questions loomed. Why hadn't they delivered more? Where were the projects? Why was everything collapsing? And then there were the personal dynamics. Hollywood isn't just business, it's tribal. People form quiet alliances. They take sides in unspoken battles. And Meghan, intentionally or not, had managed to distance herself from many of the people who mattered most. From publicists who felt burned after chaotic press tours, to stylists who complained about unreasonable demands, to assistants who hinted at diva-like behavior behind closed doors, there was a growing collection of former allies who now remained noticeably silent when her name came up. It was also hard to ignore the mounting comparisons. Meghan may have once been a standout name, but she was now competing with women like Zendaya, Florence Pugh, Sydney Sweeney. Rising stars who were commanding box offices and magazine covers without any of the baggage. These actresses came without royal titles, but with the kind of momentum and freshness that Hollywood craved. Meghan's story, for all its early intrigue, now felt recycled to many. The royal escapee turned media entrepreneur had run out of narrative. Some publicists even shared concerns privately that having Meghan at an event could become a distraction, not a benefit. They worried about optics. Would it turn the spotlight away from their clients? Would it shift the tone from celebration to spectacle? Events that were meant to promote films or causes didn't want to become scenes of social tension. And unfortunately, Meghan's mere presence had started to carry that risk. Of course, none of this was said out loud. No press release declared her persona non grata. But the silence spoke volumes. The fashion houses that once clamored to dress her now offered sample racks. Publicists dodged coordination calls. Photographers no longer angled for exclusive shots. The industry wasn't pushing her out with force. It was simply closing its eyes and moving on. This was never more clear than in the days leading up to the Weapons premiere. Meghan's team had reached out to several event organizers and PR agencies to feel out the landscape. Was there a way for her to attend? Could they facilitate a seamless appearance? The responses were diplomatic. We'll get back to you. Let us check. We'll let you know if tickets become available. But nothing came back. It was a polite stall. An unofficial no. Still, Meghan was undeterred. She believed that just showing up would shift the tide. That once she was seen, once she was photographed, the momentum would return. The public had short memories, after all, and she knew how to perform. But what she underestimated was just how deep the quiet revolt had gone. People talk in Hollywood. Not always in front of cameras, but over dinner, in private group chats, at quiet lunches in Malibu. By the time the Weapons premiere arrived, murmurs had already circulated. Meghan might come. Was she invited? No one knew for sure. And the uncertainty alone made people uncomfortable. Some studio executives reportedly debated her attendance in tense backroom conversations. If she arrived, how would they handle it? Would it overshadow the film's narrative? Would actors walk out? Would the media ignore the cast just to focus on the drama? These weren't hypotheticals. They were very real concerns. And for an industry obsessed with control, unpredictability is the one thing no one wants. Several sources even claimed that members of the cast had quietly requested not to share the red carpet with Meghan. While no names were officially attached to these rumors, insiders hinted that key figures associated with the film, including one major actress, had made their discomfort known. It wasn't personal, they said. It was strategic. This night wasn't about controversy. It was about art and prestige and moving forward. But for Meghan, it was about survival. Career survival. Relevance survival. And when you're trying to survive, you take risks. It wasn't just the industry distancing itself. The audience had shifted, too. Meghan's approval ratings in both the UK and US had dipped noticeably in recent months. Online discourse, once fiercely divided between fans and critics, now tilted more toward disinterest. People weren't arguing about her. They were forgetting her. And in the brutal ecosystem of celebrity, that's the beginning of the end. Even some of her high-profile allies had grown quiet. Oprah, who once offered her one of the most watched interviews in television history, had not publicly commented on Meghan's recent setbacks. Tyler Perry, once her vocal supporter and host, had been noticeably silent. Serena Williams, close friend and confidant, had offered no social media endorsements. The silence wasn't malicious, it was protective, self-protective. In private, people still admired her tenacity. Meghan had always fought harder than most. She had walked into palaces and studios alike with a sense of purpose. But in Hollywood, purpose only goes so far. It's the perception that counts. And her perception, at least among those who held the keys, was faltering. She didn't know the extent of the quiet revolt as she made her way to the premiere. But there had been signs. The lack of coordinated press, the refusal from certain stylists, the lack of a confirmed seat inside the venue, the absence of official RSVP confirmation. Her team told her to ignore it, that once she appeared, everything would shift. But they had underestimated just how united Hollywood had become in their silence. This wasn't a takedown. It wasn't a scandal. It was worse. It was indifference. And when Meghan stepped onto that carpet, expecting flashes and fanfare, she walked straight into a wall of restraint. The quiet revolt had succeeded, not by attacking her, but by pretending she didn't matter anymore. The moment Meghan Markle's limousine eased to a stop outside the premiere venue, the atmosphere shifted, subtly at first, then unmistakably. The red carpet stretched ahead, a well-rehearsed parade of stars, photographers, and flashing cameras. For many, it was a night of celebration, of anticipation. But for Meghan, it would become a night marked by tension, confusion, and the quiet unraveling of her Hollywood reinvention. Her heels clicked sharply against the polished pavement as she stepped out, every detail of her appearance meticulously planned to convey confidence and elegance. Her dress shimmered softly under the lights, a blend of classic and contemporary design meant to signal both royalty and reinvention. Her hair was swept into gentle waves, and her makeup was flawless, a mask of poise crafted to withstand scrutiny. But the reaction she received was far from the welcome she had hoped for. As Meghan moved down the carpet, cameras clicked, but not with the enthusiasm she expected. Photographers, trained to capture every angle of a celebrity's entrance, instead seemed hesitant, their lenses flickering from Meghan to other stars with an uneasy uncertainty. Journalists and reporters, who had been expecting to interview the film's cast, shifted their focus awkwardly, some exchanging quick, whispered conversations behind their microphones. Even more telling were the subtle cues from the crowd itself. A well-known actor paused mid-step to glance briefly at Meghan but quickly turned away, avoiding eye contact. Stylists on the sidelines exchanged puzzled looks, unsure how to react. Some guests subtly adjusted their positions, creating invisible barriers and leaving Meghan momentarily isolated. The press line, the heart of any red carpet event, was especially telling. Traditionally, it's where stars shine brightest, posing for photographs, answering questions, and engaging with the media. But as Meghan approached, the line seemed to ripple uneasily. Reporters, many of whom had once courted her presence for exclusive interviews, suddenly found excuses to move away or redirect their attention. It was as if an invisible signal had been sent. This wasn't the moment for Meghan. Photographers caught fleeting glances of confusion and even discomfort on the faces of some of Hollywood's elite as they watched her try to navigate the scene. There was no outright hostility, no loud protests or confrontations. Instead, a chilling undercurrent of avoidance and uncertainty swirled beneath the glamour. One veteran photographer, who requested anonymity, later described the scene as awkward, like watching someone try to join a conversation where they're no longer welcome. He recalled the palpable shift in energy as Meghan's presence unsettled the usual flow of the evening. The cameras didn't ignore her completely, he said. But there was hesitation, a pause. It was almost as if everyone was asking, why is she here? Meghan, however, maintained her composure. Her smile was steady, her posture poised. But beneath the surface, the tension was visible to those who looked closely. Moments of uncertainty flickered in her eyes. A question about how this was unfolding, and whether her carefully laid plans would bear fruit. She posed confidently for a few photographers, but when she moved toward the press line, the subtle coldness grew more pronounced. An attempt to engage with reporters was met with polite but dismissive answers. Questions were deflected, and interviews were brief and clipped. It was as if the media presence was performing a delicate dance, acknowledging her without encouraging further interaction. Compounding the tension were the whispers among event staff. Security personnel, assigned to maintain order, exchanged furtive glances. A few whispered about the rumors circulating backstage, about Meghan's invitation status, or lack thereof. There was talk of last-minute changes and heightened instructions from the studio's PR team, emphasizing a need to keep the focus on the film's lead actors, not on external drama. The red carpet, which had initially promised glamour and opportunity, was fast becoming a minefield. As Meghan continued, some guests appeared to retreat slightly, offering brief smiles but avoiding extended engagement. Conversations around her hushed or veered away. One A-list actress was observed stepping behind a pillar the moment Meghan approached, only to re-emerge once she had passed. It was a silent but unmistakable message. She wasn't entirely welcome. Observers noted that some of the most significant figures at the event, those who typically took center stage on such occasions, seemed guarded, almost protective of the narrative unfolding that night. Their focus was on the film's stars, the ones whose careers the premiere was designed to bolster. Meghan's presence, unexpected and unvetted by many, threatened to upset the delicate balance. Security personnel reportedly began coordinating quietly, positioning themselves in ways that subtly redirected foot traffic and media attention. Meghan was gently steered away from certain areas, her path nudged to avoid intersecting too closely with key cast members or producers. Though done with discretion, it was clear to those watching that these maneuvers were intentional. One insider later revealed that this orchestration was designed to prevent any potential confrontations or uncomfortable interactions. The studio wanted the evening to proceed smoothly, free from controversy or distraction. Meghan's appearance, while tolerated, was not embraced. Throughout the evening, Meghan maintained a dignified front, but moments of visible discomfort crept through. A brief glance at her phone, a quick message sent to her team, a fleeting pause in her stride. These small signs hinted at an internal reckoning. The night was not unfolding as she had imagined. In private conversations with her closest aides, Meghan reportedly expressed frustration and disbelief. The red carpet, once a symbol of her triumphs and social ascent, had become a stage where she felt sidelined and scrutinized. The glitz and glamour she had sought now seemed out of reach. Yet, Meghan was nothing if not determined. She continued forward, hoping for a breakthrough moment, a chance encounter, an impromptu interview, a spark of genuine engagement. But the currents of the evening pushed back, keeping her at arm's length. The juxtaposition was stark. Julia Garner and the film's main cast glided through the event with ease, basking in well-deserved attention and applause. Photographers lingered on them, reporters pressed for quotes, and guests lined up for selfies and small talk. Meanwhile, Meghan's presence was a quiet ripple, noticeable yet easily bypassed. As the evening wore on, the divide became even more apparent. Conversations buzzed about the film, the performances, the director's vision, all topics Meghan was sidelined from. The world she had hoped to rejoin was alive and thriving without her. For many observers, the red carpet disruption was not just a social slight. It was a message, a reminder that Hollywood's elite, while welcoming to some, reserved the right to gatekeep their spaces. And Meghan Markle, despite her fame and titles, was being reminded where she truly stood. By the time the cameras shifted focus to the film's afterparty, Meghan was already moving away from the spotlight. The red carpet, that iconic corridor of dreams, had become a place of exclusion. It was a moment captured in fleeting images and hushed conversations. A woman who had once held the world's gaze now facing the quiet but unyielding walls of a society that had decided not to embrace her. Behind the shimmer of flashing cameras and velvet ropes, the weapons premiere was a carefully choreographed affair. Every detail was planned to the minute, from the arrival order of the stars to the placement of media crews. But beneath this polished exterior, tensions simmered quietly, poised to erupt. No one expected the unfolding drama to center on Meghan Markle, yet it was her presence that night that ignited an unexpected confrontation, one that insiders say has already reshaped Hollywood's social landscape. As Meghan continued her carefully planned walk down the red carpet, subtle signs of resistance began to emerge. Reports from event staff reveal a flurry of hushed phone calls and urgent whispers among the security and PR teams. There were concerns about her access credentials, or the lack thereof. Was she officially on the guest list? Had there been a last-minute revocation? These questions hung in the air, unanswered, adding to the mounting confusion. According to several eyewitness accounts, just beyond the photographers and media throng, Meghan was approached by a woman wearing a headset and holding a clipboard, a key figure in the event's coordination team. The conversation was brief but intense. Meghan's expression shifted from calm to surprise, then to restrained frustration. Event staff described the exchange as tense but professional, though those who saw it said the air around them thickened with unease. The coordinator reportedly informed Meghan that her credentials for backstage access and certain VIP areas were not in order. The implication was clear. She was not permitted to proceed further into the event without proper authorization. For Meghan, who had expected a warm reception, this was an unexpected and unwelcome obstacle. What followed was a delicate but firm discussion about how to resolve the situation. Some sources suggest Meghan's team attempted to negotiate on the spot, emphasizing her public profile and her intent to support the film. But the response was unyielding. Event protocols, they insisted, were non-negotiable. Without the appropriate passes, she could not be granted full access. The atmosphere became charged. Security personnel discreetly moved closer, ready to enforce the decisions of the organizers. Meghan, never one to shy away from confrontation when pushed, maintained a polite but firm stance. She questioned the sudden change, seeking clarity and reassurance. There was, after all, no precedent for excluding a guest of her stature. However, the event's leadership remained resolute. Rumors soon circulated that some A-list attendees had expressed discomfort or even threatened to withdraw from the premiere should Meghan's presence overshadow the cast. The organizers, keen to avoid any last-minute disruptions, appeared to have sided with the majority. Amid the mounting tension, whispers spread backstage that Meghan's presence had become a liability rather than an asset. Sources reveal that several studio executives convened emergency meetings to address the situation. Damage control measures were hastily implemented to prevent the confrontation from escalating publicly. As the minutes passed, it became apparent that Meghan's access would be limited. She was effectively cordoned off from VIP areas, spaces reserved for the film's stars, producers, and invited guests. Event staff began subtly guiding her away from the press line and the main gathering zones. Several witnesses reported that Meghan was escorted toward an exit with a small security detail. The move was discreet but unmistakable. There was no loud argument or public scene, but the message was unmistakable. She was not welcome to linger. The entire episode was captured on discreetly filmed clips that would later circulate widely online. In the footage, Meghan's expression is a mix of restrained disbelief and controlled frustration as she's gently but firmly guided away. Those who watched later noted the stark contrast between her composed exterior and the palpable tension just beneath the surface. This was not the kind of public confrontation anyone expected, especially for a figure who had navigated the world of celebrity and royalty with such calculated poise. Yet the incident exposed a harsh truth, that social acceptance in Hollywood is as fragile as it is powerful, and even a duchess is not immune to its gatekeeping. In the days that followed, rumors swirled about what really happened behind those velvet curtains. Some claimed Meghan had arrived without proper invitations, banking on her fame to gain entry. Others suggested a deliberate effort by the film's promoters to sideline her, fearing she would steal the spotlight or generate unwanted controversy. Still others whispered of internal power struggles, with factions within Hollywood and the royal world intersecting in unexpected ways. Meghan's past, it seemed, was catching up to her, not through scandal alone, but through a collective decision by influential players to redraw the boundaries of where she belonged. The incident sparked intense speculation in media circles. Was this a case of Hollywood's elite protecting their own, or a manifestation of deeper resentments towards Meghan's ascent and her refusal to conform? Industry insiders remained divided but largely agreed on one point. The confrontation was a turning point. For Meghan, it was a moment of public rejection wrapped in polite professional boundaries. It exposed the limits of her current standing and underscored the challenges she faced in re-establishing herself. Yet, even as she was escorted away, sources say Meghan did not retreat silently. Behind the scenes, she reportedly made urgent calls to her legal team, media advisors, and trusted confidants, seeking ways to manage the fallout and reclaim control. Her reaction, described by insiders as both defiant and desperate, hinted at the emotional and strategic turmoil brewing beneath the surface. This was no ordinary social snub. It was a public recalibration of power, and Meghan was caught in the crossfire. Meanwhile, the broader Hollywood community watched closely. The incident ignited debates about inclusion, power dynamics, and the cost of fame. Some sympathized with Meghan, viewing her exclusion as emblematic of larger systemic issues around gender, race, and celebrity. Others criticized her approach, suggesting she had misread her welcome and underestimated the complexity of Hollywood's social codes. Whatever the perspective, the confrontation became a defining moment of the evening, one that overshadowed the premiere itself and set the tone for Meghan's precarious place in the entertainment world. In the end, the quiet but firm exclusion sent a clear message. Entry to Hollywood's inner circles is contingent not only on talent and fame, but on acceptance by its gatekeepers. And Meghan Markle, for all her accomplishments and titles, was learning that acceptance was not guaranteed. In the intricate web of public perception, the power of a couple often rests on their united front. When Meghan Markle stepped onto the red carpet that night, many eyes weren't just on her. They were also searching for Prince Harry. Would he be by her side? Would he provide support, a shield against the cold winds swirling around her? The answer was unmistakably clear. He was absent, and that absence sent ripples far beyond the glitz of the premiere. From the moment news leaked that Meghan would attend the Weapons premiere alone, speculation ignited. Hollywood insiders whispered, journalists posed questions, and social media exploded with theories. Where was Harry? Why was he not accompanying her to such a pivotal event? To many, it seemed more than a scheduling conflict. It appeared to be a deliberate choice, a symbolic distance, a fracture laid bare in public. Harry's retreat from the spotlight had been noticeable for months. Once the protective prince walking proudly alongside his wife, he had gradually taken a step back, focusing more on private life and fewer public appearances. Some saw it as a response to relentless media scrutiny and personal struggles. Others suggested tensions within the couple's inner circle, but none expected such a stark absence at this critical moment. Reports from close sources indicated that Harry had been invited to the premiere but declined, citing prior commitments and the desire to keep a low profile. Yet insiders noted that he had deliberately avoided any public association with the event, refusing to be seen with Meghan or comment on her attendance. The message was clear. He was not going to be her public champion that night. This disappearance fueled a growing narrative, one of distance, estrangement, and perhaps even conflict. The couple, once portrayed as inseparable allies in their battle against the world, was now seen as divided. The prince's silence and absence spoke louder than any statement. Media outlets seized on this absence, spinning headlines that ranged from sympathetic to speculative. Was Harry retreating to protect his mental health? Or was the split indicative of deeper rifts in their marriage? Some suggested that the pressure of Meghan's attempted comeback had created tension, with Harry unwilling or unable to step into the fray. The public, ever hungry for drama, debated fervently. Supporters lamented Harry's absence, framing it as abandonment. Critics viewed it as a calculated distancing, a way for him to protect his own image. Social media was awash with memes and hot takes, each dissecting the implications of the missing prince. Behind closed doors, sources revealed a complex reality. Harry was reportedly torn between loyalty and pragmatism. His love for Meghan was undeniable, but so were the strains of their high-profile existence. Friends close to him spoke of exhaustion, frustration, and a desire for privacy that often clashed with Meghan's public ambitions. Some insiders hinted at disagreements over strategy. Meghan, pushing for a bold re-entry into Hollywood's elite, was said to be frustrated with Harry's reluctance to engage publicly. Meanwhile, Harry was focused on family and personal healing, wary of reigniting media battles. The absence was not just emotional, but practical. Without Harry's presence, Meghan faced the premiere alone, a vulnerable position in an industry where image is everything. It was a gamble that many questioned. On the night itself, those observing noted that Meghan's demeanor carried a mixture of resolve and isolation. Without Harry, there was no buffer, no familiar face to share the pressure. The energy between the two had shifted from partnership to parallel paths. As Meghan was quietly ushered away from the press line, Harry's absence was a glaring contrast to their once unified front. The power couple was now fragmented in the public eye. This fragmentation added layers to the unfolding narrative of Meghan's evening, a tale not just of exclusion by Hollywood, but of a partnership tested by circumstance and ambition. The prince's disappearing act was a reminder that in the harsh glare of celebrity, support can be as fleeting as fame itself. For Meghan, it underscored the challenges ahead, fighting not only an industry resistant to her return, but also navigating the complexities of her most intimate relationships. As headlines blared and social media buzzed, the question lingered. Was Harry's absence a protective retreat, a silent protest, or a signal that the couple's journey together was facing its most precarious chapter yet? In the swirling narrative of the Weapons premiere, one name rose above the rest: Julia Garner. The actress, celebrated for her fierce talent and nuanced performances, was not just the star of the film. She had become the symbolic centerpiece of Hollywood's latest wave. Her presence that night was magnetic, commanding the attention of the crowd and the media alike. But for Meghan Markle, Julia's role went beyond the screen. It became an unspoken factor shaping the social dynamics of the evening. Julia Garner's rise had been meteoric. Known for her intense dedication and captivating screen presence, she had cultivated a reputation as a hard-working, humble artist. Hollywood insiders praised her professionalism and the quiet authenticity she brought to her roles. Unlike some of her peers, Julia was perceived as unassuming, focused, and untainted by controversy, qualities that endeared her to both critics and colleagues. When news of Meghan's planned appearance at the premiere surfaced, whispers circulated among the film's cast and crew. Some members reportedly expressed surprise and concern. Julia, in particular, was rumored to be uncomfortable with the attention Meghan's presence would draw. While there were no official statements, anonymous sources suggested that Julia and her team were wary of Meghan overshadowing the film's carefully crafted narrative. As the red carpet unfolded, the contrast between the two women was stark. Julia moved through the crowd with effortless grace, greeted warmly by fellow actors and producers. Photographers lingered on her with genuine enthusiasm. Interviews flowed naturally, with Julia effortlessly balancing charm and professionalism. She was the night's undeniable focus. The star Hollywood was eager to celebrate. Meghan, by contrast, encountered subtle barriers. Guests who eagerly engaged with Julia appeared more reserved when Meghan approached. Invitations to join conversations or backstage events were noticeably less forthcoming. Industry figures who once seemed eager to include Meghan now seemed hesitant or distracted. Observers noted that Julia's team appeared to orchestrate a clear boundary. Staff members politely but firmly guided Meghan away from certain areas and conversations. This was not overt exclusion, but a carefully managed distancing designed to protect Julia's spotlight. Some insiders speculated that Julia's concerns stemmed from a desire to keep the film's attention on the artistic merit rather than media distractions. Others suggested a deeper tension rooted in Hollywood's complex hierarchy, a protective instinct toward a rising star wary of competing with someone who carried a much larger, more controversial public profile. Despite these undercurrents, Julia maintained professionalism throughout. She reportedly made a point to remain courteous and gracious when interacting with Meghan, avoiding any public display of discomfort or rivalry. Yet, those close to the event say the atmosphere was charged, an unspoken battle for space and attention. The dynamics between Meghan and Julia encapsulated a broader theme of the night, the struggle between established celebrity and rising talent, between public intrigue and artistic respect. Julia represented the industry's present and future, while Meghan was fighting to reclaim relevance in a landscape that had evolved. Social media amplified the divide. Fans of Julia celebrated her as the rightful star, praising her performances and downplaying Meghan's role in the event. Online communities buzzed with debates, some framing Meghan as an interloper and others defending her right to be there. The tension spilled into comment sections and forums, reflecting the polarized sentiments surrounding both women. Publicists on both sides worked to manage the narrative. Julia's team highlighted her achievements and the film's critical acclaim. Meghan's representatives attempted to emphasize her continued commitment to storytelling and cultural impact. But the underlying social dynamics proved harder to control. Some industry experts weighed in, noting that such tensions are not uncommon in Hollywood premieres, where image management and media strategy often dictate interactions as much as personal feelings. However, in Meghan's case, the stakes were elevated by her unique position, a former royal-turned-media figure trying to navigate an industry that values both novelty and tradition. The divide also highlighted issues of inclusion and acceptance. While Julia was embraced by Hollywood's elite as one of their own, Meghan's presence challenged those boundaries. Her background, her media history, and her ambitions made her a complicated figure, one who inspired both fascination and resistance. As the evening progressed, the spotlight remained fixed on Julia, while Meghan found herself increasingly sidelined. The message was clear. The premiere was Julia's stage, and the industry was determined to keep it that way. For Meghan, this reality was a stark reminder of the social and professional challenges she faced. No amount of fame or titles could guarantee acceptance in Hollywood's inner circles. And as she navigated the event, she was confronted with the unyielding truth that belonging is earned not just through presence, but through the approval of those who control the spotlight. The Julia Garner factor was more than just a casting detail. It was a symbol of the shifting power dynamics and cultural gatekeeping that defined Meghan's experience that night. As soon as clips and images from the weapon's premiere began circulating online, social media erupted with a force few could have anticipated. Platforms like Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram became digital battlefields, where millions dissected, debated, and derided Meghan Markle's experience. The viral spread of footage showing her arrival, the cold receptions, and the subtle exclusion became a lightning rod for commentary, both supportive and scathing. From the earliest moments, social media users seized upon the contrast between Meghan's poised entrance and the evident discomfort around her. Memes were created within hours, highlighting awkward glances, missed eye contact, and the quick escorting away of a figure once deemed untouchable. The narrative was clear. Meghan had been publicly snubbed, and the internet was eager to amplify every detail. TikTok, known for its rapid viral trends, played a significant role. Creators quickly remixed footage, overlaying dramatic music, humorous captions, and sharp commentary. Some videos painted Meghan as a tragic figure, fighting for a place in a world that no longer wanted her. Others skewered her as an attention seeker, accusing her of crashing the event or trying to overshadow the film's legitimate stars. On Twitter, the discourse was frenetic. Hashtags trended, drawing in fans, critics, journalists, and casual observers. The divide was stark. Some defended Meghan fiercely, arguing that she was unfairly targeted and ostracized by Hollywood's gatekeepers. They framed her as a victim of systemic exclusion, one battling not just industry politics, but deep-seated prejudices. Opposing voices were equally vocal. Critics labeled her presence a stunt, accusing her of entitlement and poor judgment. They questioned her motives and relished the apparent social rebuke. The tone ranged from sarcastic to harshly critical, with many calling it a deserved fall from grace. Influencers and celebrities weighed in, their takes adding fuel to the fire. Some former Meghan supporters expressed disappointment or confusion, while others reinforced the narrative of Hollywood's rejection. The speed and volume of reactions turned the premiere incident into a cultural moment far beyond its original context. Media outlets also contributed to the frenzy. Sensational headlines framed Meghan's night as a public humiliation, while opinion pieces debated the implications for her career and marriage. The coverage blended fact, rumor, and speculation, often blurring the line between news and entertainment. Despite attempts by Meghan's team to control the narrative, the social media maelstrom proved relentless. Attempts to highlight her philanthropic work or upcoming projects were overshadowed by the viral clips. The internet's collective judgment felt swift and unforgiving. Psychologists and media experts noted the emotional intensity of the responses. For many, Meghan had become a symbol, representing issues of race, gender, fame, and power. Their reactions were not just about a single event, but about broader cultural conflicts playing out in real time. The viral nature of the incident also meant there was no space for nuance. Complex realities were compressed into short videos, punchy tweets, and memeable moments. The subtleties of Meghan's experience, the pressures she faced, and the intricate social dynamics were reduced to sound bites and shareable content. This digital amplification had real-world consequences. The scrutiny intensified pressure on Meghan and those around her. Public opinion polls showed a dip in her approval ratings in several markets. Brands and potential collaborators became cautious, wary of association amid the controversy. Yet, there was also a counter-movement. Some online communities rallied in support, creating hashtags and campaigns to counteract negativity. They highlighted Meghan's charitable work, resilience, and her right to pursue her ambitions. These supporters argued that the backlash revealed deep societal biases and a hunger for a scapegoat. The polarized social media landscape mirrored the broader cultural conversation, a tug-of-war between empathy and judgment, inclusion and exclusion, power and vulnerability. For Meghan, navigating this digital storm was yet another challenge. In an era where public perception is shaped in real time by millions of voices, the power to control one's narrative is limited. The Weapons premiere had become not just a social event, but a social media spectacle, with consequences that would reverberate long after the cameras stopped flashing. While the red carpet sparkled with cameras and flashing lights, a different story unfolded just beyond the public gaze. Behind the velvet curtain were the true mechanics of Hollywood events play out. This was a world of whispered conversations, hushed negotiations, and strategic maneuvering. For Meghan Markle, the backstage reality of the Weapons premiere proved as challenging as the glare of the spotlight itself. Eyewitnesses from the event later described a palpable shift in energy as Meghan arrived. The backstage area, usually a hive of coordinated activity and warm greetings, grew tense. Staffers exchanged glances, their usual scripted smiles replaced by concern or confusion. Security personnel were noticeably alert, scanning the crowd more intently than usual. One event assistant, speaking on condition of anonymity, recounted how the arrival of Meghan sparked a flurry of urgent messages. There was a sudden buzz, a mix of surprise and uncertainty, she said. It was like no one was quite sure how to handle it. The assistant noted that instructions came quickly from higher-ups. Keep things low-key, avoid drawing attention, and ensure the evening proceeded without disruption. In the corridors and waiting rooms, whispers circulated about Meghan's invitation status. Several staff members were unsure if her presence had been officially cleared or was the result of a last-minute arrangement. A few suggested that the studio's PR department was scrambling to manage the situation, fearing media fallout. Leaked internal emails hinted at last-minute debates among event organizers. Some argued for a welcoming approach, emphasizing Meghan's celebrity and potential to draw positive attention. Others cautioned against allowing her to overshadow the film's stars, concerned about shifting focus and potential controversies. Beyond the logistical challenges, there was also an undercurrent of social politics. Hollywood is known for its intricate networks of influence, and Meghan's presence disrupted established dynamics. Industry insiders recalled how certain VIP guests expressed discomfort at her attendance, fearing it would complicate the evening's narrative. In one reported instance, an assistant was overheard telling a colleague, "This wasn't in the plan. We have to figure out how to keep things smooth." The pressure on the staff was immense, balancing professionalism with the unspoken imperative to manage Meghan's involvement carefully. The backstage atmosphere was further complicated by rumors of a denied request to join the exclusive after-party. While Meghan's team had hoped for seamless access to all event spaces, sources suggest that doors were quietly closed. Security and event personnel reportedly enforced strict boundaries, limiting her movement and interaction. These restrictions were subtle but significant. Unlike other guests who mingled freely, Meghan found herself confined to designated areas, monitored closely. Such limitations were communicated not as rebukes, but as practical measures, yet their effect was unmistakable. Several insiders described Meghan's demeanor during these moments as composed, yet visibly strained. She was seen consulting with aides, checking her phone frequently, and attempting to remain engaged despite the barriers. Witnesses noted moments where she appeared isolated, surrounded by staff, but distant from the social flow. Compounding the difficulty was the awareness that her every move was being recorded and analyzed. Cameras in the media room caught fleeting glimpses of her backstage interactions, fueling the ongoing media frenzy. The pressure of performing not just for the public, but within these confined spaces weighed heavily. The experience highlighted the dual realities celebrities often face. The glamorous facade contrasted with the intricate, sometimes ruthless backstage politics. For Meghan, the backstage became a microcosm of the larger challenges she confronted, navigating access, acceptance, and image in a world quick to judge and slow to forgive. In the aftermath, leaked statements from some event staff revealed mixed feelings. While many expressed sympathy for the difficult position Meghan was placed in, others acknowledged the complexities of managing such a high-profile, yet contentious figure. The balancing act between hospitality and caution was a delicate one. The backstage saga was more than just a logistical footnote. It was a testament to how Hollywood manages power and presence behind closed doors. Invitations, access, and social capital are currency here, and Meghan's experience underscored how fragile and contested these can be.